The Hindus are not learning yoga, the Malaysian Chinese are learning yoga. You see? So, this must be the culture. The Bharatanatyam, the Kuchipudi and all the Odissi and all that must be encouraged. The singing. At least now Indian singing and music has become popular in the world, fusion and so on. And finally, the fifth point is to look into the social, economic development of the community. We must promote our Hindus, the Indians, to be, let it be Indians even if they are non-Hindus, to promote, become good in their social, economic development. So these are the 5 points. Why are the Chinese doing well in Malaysia? The Chinese are doing well in Malaysia because they never send their money back to China. But the Indians who are doing well, until 1954-55, before that they said, no, whatever we get, we'll send back to India and so on. They did not invest in Malaysia. And so, very few invested. And we were very low in the social economic development. And now we are, but fortunately after 1957, more and more Indians started investing within the country. You see? So, if not, they would have been great multimillionaires, much more than, or quite comparable to the Chinese population. You see? So, those are the 5 points which I think, and now lately, from 2009, the Hindu Sangam and all the Hindu organizations are urging the temples, Hindu temples, thousands of them in Malaysia, to implement this 5-point plan and become community centered for the Indian community around there, calling my temple, my community. So these are the type of programs we have suggested. This can be implemented in all other countries where the Hindus are in majority, irrespective of Malaysia or whatever it is. So thank you very much. I think I already said many things. On, as I mentioned, there is hardly any support federal government. Only benefit is after the elections in 2008. There are much more grants given by both, because opposition started giving. Now the government party is also concentrating a little more. But if it is compared, Islam gets everything. About 200 billion is allocated for Islamic things, but hardly 1 million or so allocated for Hindu activities. But lately, there is a slight increase, that I must admit. As for other things, I think education and so on, priority is given. The Act, as what Vedamurti said, the Act of Parliament has been misinterpreted. Special privileges they didn't mean they get everything. Is it? A little privilege here and there for a certain period. So, but the worst thing which has happened to Malaysia was amending the Constitution, Article 121, where setting up 2 different courts, and indirectly the Sharia court overrules the normal civil court and high court and federal. Federal court judges are just afraid to take anything on Islamic issues. Thank you.
You were talking about the businessman in the Chinese businessman in Malaysia. Sometime back in the Habitat Center, I happened to go to some dinner and all that. Some Malaysian company had come in a different location, not a seminar like that. Some Chinese participant was there. He was quite hell-hungry. He's in the business building real estate and all that. So I have seen that man. A few Malaysians were there. So my question to you, sir. These Chinese businessmen, are they subjected to same torture and neglect and discrimination as the Hindus, Tamil Hindus are there? I think it is different.
I can tell you one thing. If anything is done in Malaysia, which is very critical on the Chinese, China has to just murmur, and the Malaysian government will give in to many things. You see? But I don't know what to say about Indian government. But anyway, I must tell you here that Chinese people are very hard-working people. They were not brought in as laborers. They came in ships. Some part, they call it the small boats and all, worked very hard. Many of them died on the way. They worked very hard. From ordinary shop assistant or ordinary tin mine worker, they have developed themselves into good business people.
The difference between the Chinese also came in as laborers. The Indians also came in as laborers. I will take a slightly different view. To say that the Chinese worked hard, that's why they are doing well, is wrong. The Indians also worked hard. That's why they were specifically brought in. You know, the British went through the entire Indian continent and they found that to mend the rubber plantation, they needed people who are committed, who are willing to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and start tapping by 5:30. So they knew that only this community, which has been tested in Sri Lanka before in the islands, will do the job, the manual job, regimentedly. So they took these people, put them in plantation, paid them lowest of the lows. The Chinese were paid better because when they came in their droves, they were already influenced, they came on their own together with their captains. So they were supervisors who already fought for their rights. But the Indians were taken into the deep jungles, thrown in behind, and anyone who fought for their rights right from early 1900s, they made sure. I'm saying all this because the last 2.5 years I've been sitting in England to prepare for my case that I'm fighting against the British government. I found all this truth now. That anyone, even in the early 1900s, anyone who spoke for the rights of the Indians were immediately kicked out from the country. So there were nobody to speak for their rights, knowing very well they were paid the least of the least. The second part is, after the after the Second World War, the difference again between the Chinese and Indians, the Chinese were on a shorter period. They came in 3 to 5 years, and then after 5 years they were told to leave. But after the Japanese Second World War, close to 1/4 of the Chinese population, at that point of time, the Chinese population in Malaysia was 2 million. Okay? Out of that 2 million, 500 Chinese were stranded in Malaysia in 1940s, outside, in the outskirts. So they were living illegally. And after the Second World War, there was the communist threat in Malaysia. So the British government felt that these Chinese illegals who were living in the outskirts, in the jungles, were collaborating with the communist terrorists. So immediately they devised a plan to adopt these 500,000 people, settle them in land. Of course, they were encircled with barbed wires and all that. They were given land, huge areas of land called the new villages. And I also read those documents. They made sure that these people who are behind if it's a 10-acre land, barbed wires, who cares? They made sure they were given temples, they made sure they were given community halls, shopping centers, even cinema theaters. They made sure everything was within there so that these people lived comfortably. This was 1947. But for the Indians who didn't collaborate with the communists, who didn't collaborate with the Japanese, who were loyal to the British, were dumped. And in 1957, when at the most they could have sent us back, they didn't want to send us back because they needed the hard labor of the Indians because they were contributing to 70% of the country's economy. But just because in the 1980s the rubber price went down, today they are dumped without land.
I just want to add one question. Let Mr. Krishnamani read the draft resolution. Conclude this session because Mahalingam, we have to
because
Afghanistan at 2 o'clock, on Gulf at 3 o'clock, on Bangladesh at 4:30, then some other countries, a combined session of 45 minutes dealing with 4 different countries. So we have to run fast. And we have time to discuss during the dinner, during the lunch.
That's what, because we in foreign policy. I want to talk about the foreign policy. Till now, we don't have foreign policy on overseas Indians.
Okay.
Only thing,
that is also part of the
only thing, India is very much interested to get the NRI investment and remittance. But India is not looking into the concerns of the old diaspora, whether it's Malaysia or Fiji or even what we call Tobago or wherever else. I want to tell you, the Nehru period, we are interested to abolish racism.